Viktor Mihály Orbán, born the 31st of May 1963, is a Hungarian politician and jurist. He has been Prime Minister of Hungary twice, currently, since 2010, and from 1998 to 2002. He is also the present leader of the national conservative Fidesz party, a post he has held since 2003 and previously, from 1993 to 2000. Orbán entered politics in the wake of the Autumn of Nations as a young law school graduate at the head of a reformist student movement, the Alliance of Young Democrats, the nascent Fidesz. He became a nationally known politician after giving an address at the reburial of Imre Nagy and other martyrs of the 1956 revolution, in which he openly demanded that Soviet troops withdraw from the country. Following the transition to democracy in 1990, he was elected to the National Assembly and functioned as leader of Fidesz's parliamentary caucus until 1994. Under his leadership, Orbán shifted Fidesz away from its original classical liberal, integrationist platform towards center-right national conservatism. After Fidesz attained a parliamentary plurality in the 1998 elections, Orbán governed the country for 4 years at the head of a right-wing coalition government. Fidesz lost the 2002 and 2006 elections to the Socialist Party, and Orbán spent 8 years as the leader of the largest party of the opposition. The Socialists' rising unpopularity, ballooned by PM Ferenc Gyurcsány's SZOD speech, saw Orbán re-elected to the Premiership in 2010 in a landslide coalition victory. At the helm of a parliamentary supermajority, Orbán's cabinet spearheaded major constitutional and legislative reforms, which were criticized by the parties of the opposition and dozens of NGOs. Fidesz retained its supermajority in the 2014 elections, though by-elections have reduced this to a simple majority since. Orbán's social conservatism, soft Eurosceptic nationalism, constitutional reforms, and advocacy of what he calls a liberal democracy have attracted domestic and international criticism. He is considered one of the most influential leaders in the European Union. Background: Orbán was born on the 31st of May 1963 in Székesfehérvár into a rural middle-class family as the eldest son of entrepreneur and agronomist Viktor Orbán and special educator and speech therapist Ötzi Szabályos. He has also 2 younger brothers, entrepreneurs Győző Jr. and Aaron. His paternal grandfather, Mihály Orbán, practiced farming and animal husbandry. Orbán spent his childhood in 2 nearby villages, Alcsud-Doboz and Felksit in Fejér County. He finished his elementary studies there and Vetezacsa. In 1977 his family moved permanently to Székesfehérvár. He graduated from Blanka Teleki High School of Székesfehérvár in 1981, where he studied English. After completing 2 years of military service, he studied law at EOTVO's Law University in Budapest, writing his master's thesis on the Polish Solidarity movement. After graduation in 1987, he lived in Szolnok for 2 years, commuting to Budapest to his job as a sociologist at the Management Training Institute of the Ministry of Agriculture and Food. In 1989, Orbán received a scholarship from the Soros Foundation to study political science at Pembroke College, Oxford. His personal tutor was Hegelian political philosopher Zbigniew Pelczynski. In January 1990, he left Oxford and returned to Hungary to run for a seat in Hungary's first post-communist parliament. Orbán married jurist-He in 1986. They have 5 children, including retired professional footballer Gaspar, who played for Ferenc Puskás Football Academy in 2014. His first child, Eliz, was born in June 2016. Orbán is a member of the Calvinist Hungarian Reformed Church, while his wife is Roman Catholic. He is very fond of sports, especially of football. He was assigned player of the Folksat football team, and as a result he also appears in Football Manager 2006. Political career. At the age of 14 and 15, he was a secretary of the Communist Youth Organization of his secondary grammar school. Orbán said in a later interview, his political views radically changed during the military service. Formerly he considered himself as a naive and devoted supporter of the communist regime. Early career. In March 1988, Orbán was one of the founding members of Fidesz and served as its first spokesperson. The first members of the party, including Orbán, were mostly students from the Bibó István College for Advanced Studies, who opposed the communist regime. In the college, Orbán edited social science journals. His advocate, also one of the key figures among the radical students. On the 16th of June 1989, Orbán gave a speech in Heroes Square, Budapest, on the occasion of the reburial of Imre Nagy and other national martyrs of the 1956 Hungarian Revolution. In his speech he demanded free elections and the withdrawal of Soviet troops. The speech brought him wide national and political acclaim. In summer 1989 he took part in the opposition round-table talks representing Fidesz alongside Laszlo Kövesi. Returning home from Oxford, he was elected Member of Parliament from his party's Pest County regional list during the 1990 parliamentary election. He was appointed leader of the Fidesz's parliamentary group, serving in this capacity until the end of the parliamentary term in 1994. Meanwhile, on the 18th of April 1993, he became the first president of Fidesz, replacing the collective leadership called National Board. Under his leadership, Fidesz gradually transformed from a radical liberal student organization to a center-right People's Party. The conservative turn caused a severe split in the membership. Several members left the party, including Petr Molnar, Gabor Fedor and Zsuzsana Szeleny. Fedor and others later joined the Liberal Alliance of Free Democrats, initially a strong alliance of Fidesz but later political opponents. During the 1994 parliamentary election, Fidesz barely jumped over the 5% threshold. Orbán became MP from his party's Fejér County regional list. He served as chairman of the Committee on European Integration Affairs between 1994 and 1998. He was also a member of the Immunity, Incompatibility and Credentials Committee for a short time in 1995. Under his presidency, Fidesz adopted Hungarian Civic Party to its shortened name in 1995. His party gradually became dominant in the right wing of the political spectrum, while the former ruling conservative Hungary had lost much of its support. Since April 1996, Orbán was chairman of the Hungarian National Committee of the New Atlantic Initiative. In September 1992, Orbán was elected vice-chairman of the Liberal International. In November 2000, however, Fidesz left the Liberal International and joined the European People's Party. During the time, Orbán worked hard to unite the centre-right parties in Hungary. At the EPP's Congress in Esztergom in October 2002, he was elected vice president, holding the office until 2012. First Premiership. In 1998, Orbán formed a successful coalition with the Hungarian Democratic Forum and the Independent Smallholders, Agrarian Workers and Civic Party and won the 1998 parliamentary elections with 42% of the national vote. Thus, Viktor Orbán became the second youngest Prime Minister of Hungary at 35, serving between 1998 and 2002. Internal affairs. The new government immediately launched a radical reform of state administration, reorganizing ministries and creating a super-ministry for the economy. In addition, the boards of the Social Security funds and centralized Social Security payments were dismissed. Following the German model, Orbán strengthened the Prime Minister's office and named a new minister to oversee the work of his cabinet. In the process, thousands of civil servants were replaced. The overall direction was towards centralized control, despite vigorous protests from the opposition parties. In February the government decided that plenary sessions of the unicameral National Assembly would be held only every third week. As a result, according to opposition arguments, Parliament's legislative efficiency and ability to supervise the government were reduced. In late March, the government tried to replace the National Assembly rule that requires a two-thirds majority vote with one of a simple majority, but the Constitutional Court ruled this unconstitutional. The year saw only minor changes in top government officials. Two of Orbán's state secretaries in the Prime Minister's office had to resign in May due to their implication in a bribery scandal involving the U.S. military manufacturer Lockheed Martin Corp. Before bids on a major jet fighter contract, the two secretaries, along with 32 other deputies of Orbán's party, had sent a letter to two U.S. senators to lobby for the appointment of a Budapest-based Lockheed manager to be the U.S. ambassador to Hungary. On the 31st of August, the head of the tax office also resigned, succumbing to protracted attacks by the opposition on his earlier, allegedly suspicious, business dealings. The tug-of-war between the Budapest City Council and the government continued over the government's decision in late 1998 to cancel two major urban projects, the construction of a new National Theatre and of the fourth subway line. Relations between the Fidesz-led coalition government and the opposition worsened in the National Assembly, where the two seem to have abandoned all attempts at consensus-seeking politics. The government pushed to swiftly replace the heads of key institutions with partisan figures, although the opposition resisted, for example by delaying their appointing of members of the supervising boards. The government ran the institutions without the stipulated number of directors. In a similar vein, Orbán failed to show up for question time in Parliament for periods of up to 10 months. His statements of the kind that the Parliament works without opposition too, also contributed to the image of an arrogant and aggressive governance. A later report in March by the Brussels-based International Federation of Journalists criticized the Hungarian government for improper political influence in the media as the country's public service broadcaster teetered close to bankruptcy. Numerous political scandals during 2001 led to a de facto, if not actual, breakup of the coalition that held power in Budapest. A bribery scandal in February triggered a wave of allegations and several prosecutions against the independent Smallholders Party. The affair resulted in the ousting of Joseph Torgian from both the FKGP presidency and the top post in the Ministry of Agriculture. The FKGP disintegrated and more than a dozen of its MPs joined the government faction. Economy. Orbán's economic policy was aimed at cutting taxes and social insurance contributions over 4 years while reducing inflation and unemployment. Among the new government's first measures was to abolish university tuition fees and reintroduce universal maternity benefits. The government announced its intention to continue the socialist liberal stabilization program and pledged to narrow the budget deficit, which had grown to 4.5% of GDP. The previous cabinet had almost completed the privatization of government-run industries and had launched a comprehensive pension reform. However, the socialists had avoided two major socio-economic issues. issues: reform of healthcare and agriculture. These remain to be tackled by Orbán's government. Economic successes included a drop in inflation from 15% in 1998 to 10.0% in 1999, 9.8% in 2000 and 7.8% in 2001. GDP growth rates were fairly steady: 4.4% in 1999, 5.2% in 2000, and 3.8% in 2001. The fiscal deficit fell from 3.9% in 1999 to 3.5% in 2000 and 3.4% in 2001, and the ratio of the national debt decreased to 54% of GDP. Under the Orbán cabinet, there were realistic hopes that Hungary would be able to join the Eurozone by 2009. However, negotiations for entry into the European Union slowed in the fall of 1999 after the EU included 6 more countries in the accession discussions. Orbán repeatedly criticized the EU for its delay. As of Q1 2012, Hungary still did not meet the criteria for joining the Eurozone. Orbán also came under criticism for pushing through an unprecedented 2-year budget and for failing to curb inflation, which only dropped a half point, from 10% in 1999 to 9.5% in 2000, despite the tight monetary policy of the central bank. However, investments continued to grow. Foreign policy. In March 1999, after Russian objections were overruled, Hungary joined NATO along with Czech Republic and Poland. This ended Hungarian efforts to gain security in post-communist Europe. The Hungarian membership to NATO demanded its involvement in Yugoslavia's Kosovo crisis and modernization of its army. NATO membership also gave a blow to the economy because of a trade embargo imposed on Yugoslavia. Hungary attracted international media attention in 1999 for passing the status law concerning estimated 3 million ethnic Hungarian minorities in neighboring Romania, Slovakia, Serbia and Montenegro, Croatia, Slovenia and Ukraine. The law aimed to provide education, health benefits and employment rights to those, and was said to heal the negative effects of the disastrous 1920 Trianon Treaty. Governments in neighboring states, particularly Romania, claimed to be insulted by the law, which they saw as an interference in the domestic affairs. The proponents of the status law countered that several of the countries criticizing the law themselves have similar constructs to provide benefits for their own minorities. Romania acquiesced after amendments following a December 2001 agreement between Orbán and Romanian Prime Minister Adrian Nestase. Slovakia accepted the law after further concessions made by the new government after the 2002 elections. 2002 parliamentary election. The level of public support for political parties generally stagnated, even with general elections coming in 2002. Fidesz and the main opposition Hungarian Socialist Party ran neck and neck in the opinion polls for most of the year, both attracting about 26% of the electorate, according to a September 2001 poll by the Gallup organization. However, support for a joint Fidesz-Hungarian Democratic Forum party list would run up to 33% of the voters, with the Socialists drawing 28% and other opposition parties 3% each. Meanwhile, public support for the FKGP plunged from 14% in 1998 to 1% in 2001. As many as 40% of the voters remained undecided. However, Although the Socialists had picked their candidate for Prime Minister, a former Finance Minister Peter Medjesi, the opposition largely remained unable to increase its political support. The dark horse of the election was the radical nationalist Hungarian Justice and Life Party, with its leader István Circa's radical rhetoric. MIEP could not be ruled out as the key to a new term for Orbán and his party, should they be forced into a coalition after the 2002 elections. The elections of 2002 were the most heated Hungary had experienced in more than a decade, and an unprecedented cultural-political division formed in the country. In the event, Viktor Orbán's group lost the April parliamentary elections to the opposition Hungarian Socialist Party, which set up a coalition with its longtime ally, the Liberal Alliance of Free Democrats. Turnout was a record high 73.5%. Beyond these parties, only deputies of the Hungarian Democratic Forum made it into the National Assembly. The populist Independent Smallholders Party and the Right Hungarian Justice and Life Party lost all their seats. Thus, the number of political parties in the new assembly was reduced from 6 to 4. MIEP challenged the government's legitimacy, demanded a recount, complained of election fraud, and generally kept the country in election mode until the October municipal elections. The socialist-controlled Central Elections Committee ruled that a recount was unnecessary, a position supported by observers from the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, whose only substantive criticism of the election conduct was that the state television carried a consistent bias in favor of Fidesz. In opposition, Orbán received the Freedom Award of the American Enterprise Institute and the New Atlantic Initiative, the Polak Award, the Grand Cross of the National Order of Merit, the Förderpreis Sozial Marktwirtschaft, and the Merit European Prize. In April 2004, he received the Papal Head Cross of the Order of St. Gregory the Great. In the 2004 European Parliament election, the ruling Hungarian Socialist Party was heavily defeated by the opposition conservative Fidesz. Fidesz gained 47.4% of the vote and 12 of Hungary's 24 seats. Some consider the election of Dr. Laszlo Solyom as the President of Hungary to be the supernumerary fulcrum of the party. Solyom was endorsed by Vegyület, an NGO consisting of people from the whole political spectrum. Solyom's activity does not entirely overlap with the conservative ideals, and he championed elements of both political wings with a selective and conscious choice of values. Orbán was the Fidesz candidate for the parliamentary election in 2006. Fidesz and its new old candidate failed again to gain a majority in this election, which initially put Orbán's future political career as the leader of Fidesz in question. However, on fighting with Socialist-Liberal coalition, Orbán's position has been solidified again, and he was elected president of Fidesz yet again for another term in May 2007. On the 17th of September 2006, an audio recording surfaced from a closed-door Hungarian Socialist Party meeting which was held on the 26th of May 2006, in which Hungarian Prime Minister Ferenc Gyurcsány made a speech, notable for its obscene language. On the 1st of November, Orbán and his party announced the plans to stage several large-scale demonstrations across Hungary on the anniversary of the Soviet suppression of the 1956 revolution. The events were intended to serve as a memorial to the victims of the Soviet invasion and a protest against police brutality during the 23rd of October. Unrest in Budapest. Planned events included a candlelight vigil march across Budapest. However, the demonstrations were small and petered out by the end of the year. A new round of demonstrations expected in the spring of 2007 did not materialize. On the 1st of October 2006, Fidesz won the municipal elections, which counterbalanced the MSZP-led government's power to some extent. Fidesz won 15 of 23 mayoralties in Hungary's largest cities, although it narrowly lost Budapest to the Liberal Party, and majorities in 18 of 20 regional assemblies. A referendum on revoking government reforms which introduced doctor fees per visit and medical fees paid per number of days spent in hospital, as well as tuition fees in higher education, took place in Hungary on the 9th of March 2008. Hungarians usually call this popular vote the social referendum. The referendum was initiated by opposition party Fidesz against the ruling MSZP. The procedure for the referendum started on the 23rd of October 2006, when Orbán announced they would hand in 7 questions to the National Electorate Office, 3 of which were officially approved on the 17th of December 2007 and called on the 24th of January 2008. It was assumed likely that the referendum will pass, but it was uncertain whether turnout would be high enough to make it valid. Polls indicated about 40% turnout, with 80% in favor of rescinding the 3 reforms. In the 2009 European Parliament election, Fidesz won by a large margin, garnering 56.36% of votes and 14 of Hungary's 22 seats. Second Premiership. During the April 2010 parliamentary elections, Orbán's party won 52.73% of the popular vote, with a 2/3 majority of seats, which gave Orbán enough authority to change the constitution. As a result, Orbán's government added an article in support of traditional marriage in the constitution, and a controversial electoral reform which lowered the number of seats in the Parliament of Hungary from 386 to 199. In his second term as Prime Minister, he garnered controversy for his statements against liberal democracy, for proposing an internet tax, and for his perceived corruption. His second premiership has seen numerous protests against his government, including one in Budapest in November 2014 against the proposed internet tax. In terms of domestic legislation, Orbán's government implemented a flat tax on personal income. This tax is set at 16%. Orbán has called his government pragmatic, citing restrictions on early retirement in the police force and military, making welfare more transparent, and a central banking law that gives Hungary more independence from the European Central Bank. After the 2014 parliamentary election, Fidesz won a majority, garnering 133 of the 199 seats in the National Assembly. While he won a large majority, he garnered 44.54% of the national vote, down from 52.73% in 2010. During the 2015 European migrant crisis, Orbán ordered the erection of the Hungary-Serbia barrier to block entry of illegal immigrants so that Hungary could register all the migrants arriving from Serbia, which is the country's responsibility under the Dublin Regulation, a European Union law. Orbán questioned Nord Stream 2, a new Russia-Germany natural gas pipeline. He said he wants to hear a reasonable argument why South Stream was bad and Nord Stream is not. South Stream refers to the Balkan pipeline cancelled by Russia in December 2014 after obstacles from the EU. Political views. Orbán's blend of soft Euroscepticism, populism, and one-nation conservatism has seen him compared to politicians and political parties as diverse as David Cameron's Tories, Jaroslaw Kaczynski's PiS, Marine Le Pen's Front National, Spain's Podemos, Matteo Renzi, Donald Trump, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, and Vladimir Putin. According to Politico, Orbán political philosophy Flappiefh echoes the resentments of what were once the peasant and working classes by promoting an uncompromising defense of national sovereignty and a transparent distrust of Europe's ruling establishments. Orbán is seen as having laid out his political views most concretely in a widely cited 2014 public address at Báltusnad. In the address, Orbán repudiated the classical liberal theory of the state as a free association of atomistic individuals. In his view, the state is the means of organizing, invigorating, or even constructing the national community. Though this kind of state respects traditionally liberal concepts like civic rights, it is properly called a liberal because it views the community, and not the individual, as the basic political unit. In practice, Orbán claimed such a state should promote national self-sufficiency, national sovereignty, familialism, full employment, and the preservation of cultural heritage, and cited countries such as Turkey, Singapore, Russia, and China as models. Orbán's second and third premierships have been the subject of significant international controversy, and reception of his political views is mixed. The 2011 constitutional changes enacted under his leadership were, in particular, accused of centralizing legislative and executive power, curbing civil liberties, restricting freedom of speech, and weakening the constitutional court and judiciary. For these reasons, some critics have described him as irredentist, populist, authoritarian, Putinist, as a strongman, and as a dictator. Other commentators, however, have noted that the European migrant crisis, coupled with continued Islamist terrorism in the European Union, have popularized Orbán's nationalist, protectionist policies among European conservative leaders. Once ostracized by Europe's political elite, writes Politico, Orbán is now the talisman of Europe's mainstream right.